Good afternoon and happy Friday, everybody. Just a couple minutes after 1 o'clock, which makes it time for sixth grade social studies. It's Friday, May 8th, which is hard to believe already that we're this far into May. School year, have just a few more weeks left. So, something to look forward to. I know it's not been the school year that maybe any of us probably wanted to go through, but it's the one that we've been dealt. So we got to make do with kind of what we have. So let's stick through it. I see we got a couple people in the chat. So hey, Dimitri. Hey, Lena. Um, Hope you guys are doing well, staying safe. Um, yeah, we'll give it a few minutes before we go ahead and start our uh, little mini lesson here today, kind of going over some of the next assignments in our Blizzard bag packet. Hey, David. Good to see you here. Been going through some stuff like that. Well, it's understandable. I know it's not always the easiest, in these streams that we do. They're meant to kind of help and supplement. If you can't get to them, that's totally understandable. Well, we know that families have a lot going on, especially with families that have a lot of children maybe in different grades and stuff like that, or have a lot of siblings. It's really kind of difficult to keep a handle on everything, and especially given what work looks like for some people, or maybe what work doesn't look like for some people and some families. It's always difficult. So we do appreciate when you guys are able to join. Good to see you here, Lucas. So like I said, we'll get going in just a little bit. um, so a couple of things though before we get going. If you guys haven't been paying attention to the uploads here on YouTube, made some separate videos for assignment number 4 from the Blizzard bag, assignment number 5. On Wednesday, I was not able to stream for the 8th grade, so we had to make a different video that went over um, assignment 5, which was the Newsela article looking at social contract and popular sovereignty. It was a kind of nice recap um, and reminder of assignments 3 and 4, really, are focused a lot on Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, these kind of new ideas on government. And then assignment 4 was looking at who rules. Okay, so we have these different forms of government, looking at autocracies, really where there's one person in charge, and this change with democracies, where people have the power, whether it's through like a direct democracy or maybe it's even a representative democracy. So that News LA article was really a nice um, kind of summation, kind of looking at both those lessons, those activities, and kind of bringing them together in a article format. And it was just the 4 question multiple choice quiz that you guys are used to on News ELA. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, go ahead and uh, give them a look if you're struggling on any of those assignments. But yeah, I tried to keep those videos relatively short, like just under a half an hour or so. Sorry, I'm just trying to get some things situated on my end and take attendance for who all is here. So I know I got Elena, Dimitri, David, Lucas, and hopefully we'll get some others that join us as the looks like you need to shave. Yeah, I've been getting bored, obviously, here at home. So I've been doing different things like each week. A couple weeks back, I had just the goatee. Then, like a week after that, I was just doing a mustache. Now, trying to get the full on beard going. Really just to entertain myself and to kind of see what my wife thinks. And she just kind of rolls her eyes and laughs. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'll keep it, try to have it grow in a little bit more. But Lena, I appreciate always the honest truth that you dole out. But I hope everything's going well for you, or I hope that things get better. Um, but it's good to see you here. I know we haven't seen or heard from you for like a week or two. The 6th grade gentleman, glad you're here here as well. Um, and guys are constantly here, which is very much appreciated. I know we got a lot of work to keep up with, and And I know it's maybe not always the easiest thing because we probably have to share the computer in some cases. And Dimitri, I know it seems like you guys are always fighting for time for whose class it is, or whether it's with Katana or any of the other younger siblings. But Lucas is always here, David's always here, which is nice to see. Are you guys having a good week so far? Everybody staying safe. I just can't believe it's already May 8th. That's crazy to think about. And to think that we haven't really been in school for close to 2 months. I think I went in earlier with your puppy. Nice. My parents got a new puppy few maybe close to a month ago. Maybe not that long, 3 weeks maybe. Their dog that they had for a while, unfortunately, they had to put down. It was just getting too old and was in a lot of pain, but been bored. Yeah, I feel you there. We're trying to stay busy, trying to keep ourselves occupied by doing projects around the house and playing with all the boys here. He's now 3 months. Okay, what kind of puppy is it? Yeah, maybe you've told me before. I can't remember. Puppies they always keep you busy though, that's for sure. A Maltese, okay. Very nice. Let's see. Those are cute little things. So we've always kind of had bigger dogs. Ours is a kind of weird, super fun and scrumptious. Our dog is a Rottweiler Golden Retriever mix, so she looks really just like a black Golden Retriever, the long fur or like a long coat and stuff like that, but she's pretty much just all black. She has a little bit of brown in her snout from the rot. Um, but she's crazy. She still thinks she's a puppy, even though she's going to be 6 or 7 this year later in October. All right. Well, it's about 10 after, guys. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do is just a quick overview of things that we went over before. We've really started this newest Blizzard bag, kind of looking at this idea of checks and balances in our system of government, picking up from where the last Blizzard bag left off, looking at the 3 branches of government, what the roles and responsibilities of each branch of our government was. So we had, the News LA article and that handout looked at like this flow chart saying, well, this is one check or one balance or one way that one branch checks out or balances the other, just really to ensure that not one branch is able to kind of do anything they want and kind of have unlimited power. I hope you don't eat my puppy, Lena. That'd be cruel. Um, and then from there, we really started, going back into this time period called the Enlightenment, where people really started coming up and questioning uh, what government was, or how does government come to be? How does it get its power? And there's differing opinions on that. Some thought government should be in the form of a pretty controlling and strict monarch, like a king. That was Thomas Hobbes' idea because he thought people were naturally kind of wicked, cruel, prone to violent behavior and things like that. And you had some contrasting views with like John Locke, John Jacques Rousseau, and several others who believe that governments ought to protect its citizens and that the power is given to the government by the citizens, and then there's this agreement or this social contract between the government and the people. So the last few assignments have looked at that, and again really tried to understand these different forms of government and who is in charge or who rules in those forms of governments, whether it's like a dictatorship, a maybe it's a parliamentary democracy, or maybe it's the form of a monarch where the king or queen doesn't have any real power. They're just more of a figurehead, and it's really parliament. I think the government is stupid, but not this. Look at modern day examples like Great Britain. They still have the queen, but she really doesn't have any kind of influence or control in the government. She really is just a symbol, more or less, with no real power. The power is with the British Parliament, their governing body, their equivalent of like our Congress, and their prime minister is like their version of a president, the kind of face of the country. But today's assignment, what we're going to take a look at, is assignment number 6 in our Blizzard bag. So if you don't have that, please make sure that you grab it. Obviously, it should be something that you have handy if you're kind of joining these live chats. It's called A Dive into Democracy. So Lena, this may be kind of review for you since where seventh grade started with ancient Greece. We kind of got into the origins and how the Greeks came up with this idea of democracy. Lena, are you referring to what Lucas put in the comments there, or was it something I said? But anyway, again, we're going to take a look at assignment 6. I know I really don't have them numbered in the packet. I have them on the overview, but it looks like this. Okay. So dive into democracy. Okay, we've got the Parthenon over here in the top corner. Okay. So generally, yes, I am. So we're going to approach this very similar to how we have done other ones. I'm going to go ahead and do the read aloud. And you can follow along if that helps you. If not, if you want to read on your own, and then if you got questions, ask them in the chat. You can go ahead and do that. Whatever best works for you. After we complete the reading, we'll take a look at the activities. I'll kind of give you some helpful, hints or clues or ways to think about these activities and questions. Not necessarily going to give you all the answers. Just kind of help, make some things maybe a little bit more obvious or go into a little bit more detail than what the questions have. And when it comes to activities, there's one thing that I'm not going to make a requirement. If you do complete it, it'll be extra, but we'll kind of address that when we get to that point. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and start the reading. So if you don't have Blizzard Bag assignment number 6 with you, please grab that. I got mine right here. And again, if you maybe lost yours or misplaced it, there is a version of it on Google Classroom, a PDF. You can pull that up on a separate tab. Yeah, that's almost English, Lena, what you're typing there. If you're able to stay with us through the chat, you can, more than welcome to, or, we want you, taking part in this if you can, but if you got other things to do, we understand. On the phone. Oh, okay. You kids and your shorthands and stuff and your crazy texting. All right. So, like I said, we'll go ahead and get started. So, a dive into democracy. So, when the founding fathers sat down to create a government, they didn't just make it up off the top of their heads. They did a little comparing first. They studied different philosophies, the Native American and British governments. They flipped through their history books to look at what had worked in the past. That brought them to ancient Athens. And this is kind of where seventh grade really starts the year after a quick review of primary sources, some essential vocab and stuff like that. And then we really pick up with ancient Greece. So now we're going to look at Athens, leader of the pack. So in about 507 BCE, before the Common Era, or BC before Christ, whichever one you prefer to use, really they mean the same thing. After centuries of oppressive tyrants and rule by a select few, the people of Athens, which is a Greek city-state, decided to shake things up. They formed a democracy, a government that gets its power from the people, not kings or military dictators. So, the word itself, democracy, it's, if you break it up, demo or demos really means like the people, and crassy means the rule of. So if you combine those two together, you got the rule of the people. So back to the reading here. It's to empower people even more. They practice direct democracy, where citizens create and vote on the laws themselves, not through elected representatives. And that was an example from one of the previous assignments. Who rules? That was assignment number 5. I kind of went over what a direct democracy is and how that's different from a representative democracy. And direct democracies, the people themselves are active in the lawmaking and voting process. It's not like what we have here in a representative democracy where we vote for, one or a couple people to represent a much larger population, a whole state, for example. So got to get this down on papyrus. So about halfway down, okay, and make sure as we're going along, look at the pictures. They may give some helpful clues and provide a little bit more insight as well. So got to get this down on papyrus. So it sounds simple, right? But not quite. Democracy didn't just happen. Like any government, it needed rules and structures to make it run smoothly. But people can't follow rules unless they know them. So the Athenians wrote several constitutions or documents that describe the laws and organization of a nation and included their history and customs in them as well. By writing it down on paper or, they say papyrus, uh, the Athenians established a shared standard for how people should behave and guidelines for what to do if they didn't. Now, of course, in this time, not everybody was able to read and write. Literacy was very low. It was really only reserved for the wealthy in society and for more or less kind of religious officials. But still, the act of putting the rules down on a format like this and being able to post it in like the Rome or in these like city centers and the forums, these town squares where people would gather and meet, discuss politics and discuss the events of the day, made it more accessible for the people. And if you look over to the right of where I just read, says the Athenian Constitution was written by philosopher Aristotle. It can be found today in the British Library in London. So it's a really cool piece of history. It's a primary source that, if ever world opens back up, you travel one day when you guys are of age, you go check out the British Library and possibly see some of these really cool artifacts. Um, you know, British have a lot of cool pieces of kind of other cultures' history, just because at one point, with the British Empire being so large, they were able to colonize much of the world and were able to kind of take artifacts or things that really displayed how powerful and how prominent the British Empire's reach was. And there's been a lot of um, talk and discussion in more recent years. Should countries like Great Britain, maybe the United States, and other Western powers kind of give back these artifacts of colonies or of countries that they once occupied and controlled? Um, so it's just an interesting thing to think about. And of course, they talk about how the Athenians writing their constitution or writing their laws and ideas down. That way, people kind of knew what the consequences were if you didn't follow them, or kind of just laid out the guidelines for what citizens were expected to do. It was a good example, and then, again, it provided this constitution, this rule book, really, of what their country was all about. So we're about three-fourths of the way down on this reading now. We're at who runs this place, and this is where maybe we look and start nitpicking a little bit at where maybe the Athenians didn't do so well. But they came up with this great idea of democracy, but did it apply to everybody? Was everybody involved in this? We'll see in kind of the remainder of this reading. So, who runs this place? The people. Well, certain people, it says. To function, democracy required civic participation, which means all citizens had to be active in their government. They had to serve in the military and hold public office. In return, the government gave them rights and promised protection. So, was everyone a citizen? Nope, not even close. If you were a woman, a slave, a child, or a foreigner, you were not a citizen. You had no rights. But if you were a free male, 18 or older, and your parents were Athenians, you were a citizen. That meant you were treated equally under the law, had freedom of speech and voting rights, the power to approve or disapprove Athens' laws. Again, with direct democracy, the people are active in a lot of the political decisions in Athens. But again, that really only applied to what they considered citizens, male, 18 or older. Your parents have to be citizens, and you got to do some military service. This didn't apply to women. This didn't apply to slaves. This didn't apply to children, foreigners. So, again, the requirements, they made sure to make it so it only applied for a certain percentage of the population. And if you look to the left of what I was reading, it says not exactly government of all the people. Athens' population was about 250,000 to 300,000. So yet only 30 to 40,000 were citizens. It's a small fraction. And only about 5,000 of them regularly attended the assembly. So we're going to get into kind of what this assembly is in just a second. But, civic participation here in the United States is something that is very important to our political process. And for a significant amount of American history, not everybody was able to participate civically or was able to go out and vote. Again, it was really just white males who owned property for much of the early history of what became the United States. It didn't wasn't necessarily applied to females, African Americans. So these countries and even the United States don't get it right the first time. They got to make changes. They got to develop. They got to progress throughout their history. So, how to make a law part one. So, at the bottom section, okay, right next to where the graphic is of like all the people raising their hands. So, 2 or 3 times a month, the citizens of Athens gathered together to vote on laws. So, this gathering was called the assembly. And it says, like the school assembly, but with slightly different list of things to discuss. And again, only about 5,000. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. About 5,000 citizens attended the assembly on a regular basis. So the assembly was a legislative body or group of people who made laws. At their meetings, any citizen could speak their mind, and the group discussed everything from financial issues and war to trade, public festivals, and even how the ferry boats should run. So imagine if everybody, all 5,000 members, wanted to speak something. You would think that these would take a very long time, and I'm sure that they did. So, to encourage civic participation, they were paid to attend. So, if again you fall under these requirements of a citizen, part of civic participation or another way to kind of help promote civic participation is that these people are going to get paid. I would love to get paid to go out and vote and stuff like that, or to serve on a jury. But that's different time, different place, I guess. So once a law was discussed, the citizens voted on it. How? By raising their hands, of course. Whichever side received the most votes won. And that was it. The law passed or it didn't. So again, you got these really kind of core fundamental ideas of democracy, giving people or citizens the power to enact laws, to vote on them, and something as simple as like either saying yay or nay. And whichever had the majority, that would either carry the vote or it would stop this process from happening. All right, so that was page one of the reading. So now we're going to jump into the second page. Okay, so Diagon Democracy, reading page two, has a group of people up in the top left-hand corner there. So we saw what the assembly was, that group of about 5,000 citizens who get to vote on issues for the day or whatever the citizens felt was important to talk about and bring up to the bigger group as a whole. So now how to make a law part two. But meeting 2 or 3 times a month isn't very often. Athens needed a group that could meet frequently and handle the city's day-to-day affairs. So a quote full-time government called the Council of 500 also existed. The council was another legislative body. They wrote the authoritative orders called decrees, discussed the proposed laws, and created the list of issues the assembly voted on. The assembly could not vote on a law unless the council had debated it first. So again, we got a very early example of maybe a checks and balance here. It says that the assembly, so that first group of like 5,000 or so, could not vote on law unless the council had debated on it first. So the smaller group kind of is able to really bring up what they think is maybe more important to discuss and then allow the assembly to vote on it. So really this was more like part one. But during a crisis or war, the council could make laws without the assembly. So again, in times of crisis, war, maybe natural disaster, instead of waiting on votes to happen, power was given to this Council of 500 to make sure something or a decision gets made quickly. If it's to declare war against another Greek city state, or maybe it's a foreign invader, or if it's to help, try to rebuild a city after a volcanic eruption or something like that, or maybe any other kind of natural disaster that would happen in the Mediterranean at that time. And you get to see a pretty cool picture there. I know it's in black and white, but if you were able to see some of the seventh grade projects that they were trying to make before, the pandemic, you saw a couple of them making or trying to make like these theaters or kind of similar. Since ancient Rome borrowed a lot of ideas from ancient Greece, they're very similar in style and structure. But the Council of 500 met at the Bouleuterion, I'm guessing, or Council House. Sound almost sounds like Boulevard. The structure had leveled seating, so members could easily hear and see each other during political discussions. So you can kind of see where the stage or the floor would have been, and then you have this kind of slightly tiered seating, so people could kind of hear. The acoustics would have been very nice, I would imagine. Um, Almost looks like a stage for a play in some ways. All right, so the second section, it's not about being popular. So, how did someone get on the council? By chance, mostly. The Council of 500 wasn't elected, they were chosen by lottery, kind of like pulling a name out of a hat. And not just anybody could have the job. A council member had to be a citizen, so again, male, 18, parents of Athenian heritage, and serve in the military, um, and at least 30 years old, and could only serve for 1 year, though they could serve more, or they could serve 2 1-year terms. So maybe their name gets picked again in this lottery. So they start, incorporating or including some of these requirements, very similar to requirements that United States has for its elected officials, whether it's a president, a senator, state representative, or any kind of elected position. There have to be some sort of requirements. So, like the assembly, the members got paid to make sure all regions in the city state were represented. Council members were chosen from each of Athens' 139 territories. Maybe that's something similar to counties we would have. Um, maybe they're the size of states. Ancient Greece was much smaller than what the United States is in size today. So my guess is that it would be something similar to what we think of counties. So we live in Summit County, or maybe we live in Summit, Port, or maybe you live in Stark and Portage, Lorraine, and all these counties kind of in Northeast Ohio. So, how many representatives did each territory get? Well, that depended on the region's population. The larger the territory's population, the more representatives it had on the council. So, very similar to our House of Representatives. Okay, states with bigger populations get more representatives, and the exact opposite are true. Small population states get less representatives. So again, that's another idea maybe that a lot of our founding fathers kind of took and borrowed from the ancient Greeks. All right, about halfway down, the law doesn't apply to me, does it? So if citizens made the laws, then who had to follow them? Well, everyone actually. The Athenians believed in the rule of law. That meant everyone had to follow the law, citizens, non citizens, rich or poor. No matter how famous or powerful someone was, they still had to obey. And if they didn't, they were punished just like everyone else. Nobody was an exception. So, again, that's this kind of strict guidance or adherence to this rule of law. And so citizens made it with the mindset or the belief, citizens are the best or kind of represent the best of the population. If the citizens make the laws and the rules, then everybody needs to follow, regardless of whether you qualify as a citizen or not. All right, so second to last section, a jury of their peers and peers and peers. All right, so to deal with those charged with a crime or someone wanted to challenge a law they didn't like, the Athenians created the People's Court. Sounds like a TV show, right? But this court didn't have a courtroom, lawyers, or a judge. It was a trial by jury, which means decisions about a case were made by the people, and a lot of them. The smallest jury size was 201. Sometimes there were 501 jurors, and for really important trials, there had to be 1001, 1501. Uh, but once again, only citizens could volunteer to be jurors, and they had to be at least 30 years old. Again, some more requirements, another thing that citizens are required to do. So during a trial, a person from each side of the case gave a speech to the jury, who then took a vote. So whoever got the most votes won the case. So it's a very kind of stripped down and very basic form of what we have today in our courts. But again, we do have the judges, we have the lawyers, and we do have a jury. The lawyers kind of pitch their either the prosecution or defense, and then those lawyers are making the case for the jury to decide. Then the jury votes, and But the juries that we have today are much smaller. They're not up in the hundreds or thousands. And a weird kind of thing you see here is the numbers, 200 to 1, 500 to 1, 1,000 to 1. And that obviously is to ensure that there is a majority in the case when it comes to a voting. So if you just keep it at 200 or if you just keep it at 1,000, there is the slight chance that 100 people say yay and 100 people say nay. So what do you do then? You want to make sure that you have a odd number so that there is always going to be a majority one way or another. And the same is true in our jury. When you guys get to be of age, the voting age, 18 and stuff like that, and your name gets put in, and you may get something in the mail sometime saying, okay, you've been summoned for jury duty. Now, that happened to me last school year. I think it also happened to like Miss Fawn last school year and Mr. Fosnight. So within like a month time, I think the three of us all got summoned for jury duty. I don't think any of us really uh, had to serve, but we were summoned, and that's one of the responsibilities of a citizen here in the United States. Voting is jury duty, and you guys will kind of experience that when you get to be of age. And the picture of the vases or the urns next to the reading says, after a trial, jurors voted in the winner by placing a pebble into one of two urns. So if you think maybe this person was guilty, put it here. If not, put it there. Or if this guy had made a good case saying he wants to change the law, put it there in that urn, or put it in the one over there. So again, maybe kind of simple in concept to us today, but again, really kind of groundbreaking for the ancient Athenians, because for a lot of human existence at this point, they were mostly ruled by kings, and they lived in these kingdoms where a king had absolute power, or any kind of royal or any kind of monarch had absolute power. So, something to think about, kind of bringing everything together to conclude our reading here. Athenian democracy lasted over 200 years, and that impressed America's founding fathers. And as they designed the United States government, they incorporated many ideas from the ancient Athenians, most importantly, democracy, the idea that the government gets its power from the people. And this is something the founding fathers, that see in history books and stuff like that, portrayed in movies, documentaries, really felt was important, was that making sure that people, again, when we get into A3, we'll kind of look at um, the difficulties, not difficult, but the hypocriticalness, I guess, for lack of a better term, the hypocrisy, I guess, of these people like Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and others saying, hey, people should have the right to get a say in their government. But again, when they're coming up with the Constitution, not everybody is able to enjoy these freedoms. Again, it mostly is going to apply to white men who own property. It's not going to apply for freed blacks. It's not going to apply to women early on. It's not going to apply to slaves. Slaves in the Constitution weren't even counted as people. They're still considered property at this point. And again, it's a unique thing to think about when we get to that point in American history. The founding fathers are revered and looked up to these as these immortal figures, kind of godlike in some cases, especially Washington. But these were men. They had faults. They were products of their time. They may have come up with a really great form of government, but again, it was a government that didn't apply or work for everybody. But that's, again, for sixth grade, that's something that we'll look at down the road in just a couple of years. All right, so that was the reading for a dive into democracy. So we got a nice kind of little background there into ancient Athens and kind of how they came up with this idea of democracy, citizenship. Even though it didn't apply to everybody, it was still crucial for this idea of a democracy, for giving power to the people. So the people had a say in the government and how they're going to be ruled. All right, so what we're going to take a look at here for the remainder of our kind of lesson today are the activities. Now, before we kind of jump into it, I want to let you guys know this page, okay? So where it says extension activity, this is not required, okay? This is not required for you to do, okay? If you would like to do it, you can, okay? And when I get to grading these, if I see that you did it and looks not good, tried your best, you'll get some extra credit. So the extension activity is not required, okay, because there's a lot of activities in this assignment. So this one is going to be extra credit. Think of it that way. So you don't need to do the one that looks like this. If it says extension activity, not required. Okay? But if you want to challenge yourself a little bit, go ahead and do it. If you really want to, you can put a big X on it. That way you know you don't have to do it. But we have quite a few activities, like I said, for this assignment. Hey, Kennedy. Good to see you here. Kennedy, what we are doing is going over one of our assignments from the latest or from the newest Blizzard bag. I guess it's not really new. You guys have had it for a few weeks now. But we're looking at a dive into democracy, and that's assignment number 6. If, the first page of the Blizzard bag is a letter I wrote to families and stuff. The second page is like the overview where I list the assignments, put the schedule and things like that. So this is assignment number 6, a dive into democracy. So the first part of this video, I did the reading out loud, and what we're about to get into is me just giving a quick kind of overview of the activities. So if you want to start the video over, you can, or you can just pick up here. That's totally fine. Whatever works best for you. If you got questions, put them in the chat. I can help you out. Clear classmates. We got Lucas here. We got Dimitri. We have David as well. We got Lena, as you can see. So you got plenty of help here. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the activity. Now, this first handout, or this first part of the activity, has about 4 of them. So it has activities A through D. And the first one here is simple vocab matching. Okay. So it gives you 7 of the kind of bold or key terms from the reading. So that's kind of your first clue, first hint, is to look at the reading and see what words are bold and throughout the reading, and that will kind of help you out. So the activity gives you 7. So it gives you 7 terms. So you're not going to use all the words, and you're just matching them to the definition. So we can, do maybe like 1 or 2 of these together if we want to. So again, for part A or activity A, match them up. Connect the definition to the political term. So legislative body. Okay, where would we find legislative body? So going back to the reading here. Okay. Legislative body. Okay, so I found that in the last section of the first page of the reading. So the legislative body, which is a group of people who made laws. Okay, so if I'm looking at, again, legislative body, trying to match up the definition, go back to the reading, found it here in this bottom paragraph. Okay, legislative body is a group of people who make laws. I'm going to match and draw an arrow or just right beside number 1, the letter F. Okay, so a group of people who make laws, letter F for number 1. Okay, and number 1 was F. And we'll go ahead and look at one more here. Let's just pick number 5. So rule of law. Okay, so again, just going back into the reading here and looking for rule of law. Sorry, I thought I heard one of my crazy twins screaming. Oh, Kennedy, don't worry about Lena. She's just trying to make others feel bad because she knows she has a big head. Okay, so number 5, again, looking at rule of law. We're looking for the vocab in activity A here. Okay, rule of law. It's about halfway down on the second page of the reading. Okay, so rule of law. So that meant everybody had to follow the law. Citizens, non-citizens, rich or poor. Okay, so would it be A, the government where the citizens vote on the laws themselves? No. The idea that no one is above or an exception to the law? Possibly. Citizens take an active role in the government? Not really. D, citizens decide the outcome of a legal case? No, not really. The power to approve or disapprove laws? No, we already found F. or is it G? A document that outlines the organization. Okay, so the one that best fits this, even though it is not exactly word for word, would be letter B, the idea that no one is above or an exception to the law. That would be number five. Five for activity A would be B. Lena, I'm joking, of course. Um, so yeah, there's a couple that we have done together. It's more than I did for the seventh grade yesterday. We didn't kind of do any of these together. So again, the ones that we did and looked at together were number one, legislative body was F, and number five was B. And then you should be able to kind of knock the rest out on your own. Again, just go back to the reading, look for the bold vocab words, and see if you can match the definition. Okay, so for part B here, it's asking us to fill in the box. Okay, so part B, fill in the box. It says there were three main political institutions in Athens. Okay, write the name of each at the top of the box. Okay, so that's the first thing we got to do. And below the name, write what each group did. Okay, so that's the second thing. So find the group, write what they did, then place a check mark in the box if citizenship was required to participate. And that's the third thing. So we got to find the name of a political group. There's three of them. Write in a short sentence or bullet point what that group did, and then put a check if citizenship was required. So again, go back to the reading, see what were those three main political bodies or those political institutions in Athens. Okay. So I'll help you with one of them. I'll give you the first one. In the first box, the first real political institution is the assembly. Okay. So the assembly, that is that group of about 5,000 members. Okay. That's the legislative body, or if you want to put another way, that's a group of people who make and talk about laws. Okay. So again, the assembly could be in that first box. That would go above the line. Below the line is us writing what that group did. You could say the group of people who make and talk about laws. And yes, if you were going to be in the assembly, you had to be a citizen. So this box would also get a check mark. And another big hint, all three of them are going to have check marks. And so the other two boxes are going to have check marks, but we'll leave the other two boxes for you guys to kind of fill out or to find. But the first one, again, is the assembly. That's a group of people who discuss and talk about the laws. And yes, you had to be a citizen to partake or to be an active member in that political institution. Any questions so far? We got about like 15 minutes left or so, which I think should be enough time to kind of go over the rest of these activities. Because I know Mr. Andrews here is getting hungry. I've not eaten lunch yet. I had kind of a late breakfast, but my belly is telling me that it needs to eat. So I'll try to tough it out the last 15 minutes here before I go find something in my cupboard. That is Lucas Kennedy. That would be Lucas. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at activity C, where it says citizens rule, with the little dude in the bottom corner here. Okay, activity C. What does this emoji mean? I don't know. It's hard to see. So activity C, citizens rule. So citizens were the foundation of government. Again, didn't apply to everybody. You had certain requirements, and this is what part C is asking you guys to do, is to look for those requirements. So it lists the requirements for being a citizen in ancient Greece. Okay, 4 of them. There are 4 requirements, and you can find this in. Oh, I just had it. Oh, you can find this in Who Runs This Place. Okay. So again, those were 4 requirements for part C. The requirements for what it takes to be a citizen are going to be in the second paragraph of who runs this place. I'll help you out with one of them. Again, one of these four requirements is that you had to be male. Okay. Again, this ancient Athenians, ancient Greeks, great with the idea of coming up with democracy and great not applying it to everybody. So one of those requirements for what it takes to be a citizen is that you had to be male. Okay, so that's one of the four. You have to find the other three. And again, you can find those three in the section who runs this place, okay, in the second paragraph here. Okay, so the part D then is having us do just a little bit of math. Okay, so if you got a calculator, great. If you got your phone on you, pull up the calculator, or type it in on a computer. You can always do that, just like in the Google search bar or something. And it's not a hard or difficult math. It's just really dividing in percentages and stuff like that. So D is saying math moment. It wants us to use the information from the reading. Okay, so it's telling us to get the reading. And so have it with you if you don't already. So use the information from the reading to answer the questions. So number one, what was the average population of Athens? Okay, what was the average population? It gives us a kind of range in the reading, and actually it gives us the information kind of here in this little sidebar, this box right here. So I think the best way to kind of look at this would be to kind of pick the number right in the middle. It says that population was between 250,000 and 300,000. So for number one, for part D, I would say use the number 275,000. So I'll put that number in the chat to kind of help you out a little bit to visualize it. It'll be nice if my computer wants to actually work. There we go. So for number one, for part D, this is the number I would write in. So 275,000. Again, because in the reading, it kind of gives us this range between 250,000 and 300,000. So we're just going to kind of split it in the middle and say 275,000. And so that's one for part D. And now number two is asking what was the average number of citizens? And same kind of thing here. They give us a range between 30 to 40,000. Okay. So they in that same little box, they say between 30 and 40,000. I'd say go ahead and kind of split that difference in half. So of the 275,000 roughly, only about 35,000, okay, were citizens. So there's a little help with 1 and 2, okay? So a little help with 1 and 2. Again, this is for part D. And now for numbers 3 and 4, that's where it's going to have you guys do a little bit of math, just some basic kind of division here, then moving a decimal over a couple spots. I'll go ahead and continue on with this one because if there was any kind of tricky one, this would have been it. And this is good practice for percentages as well. Okay, so using these numbers, okay, I put those there in the chat. Using these numbers above, what percentage of Athens' total population were citizens? Okay, so of the 275,000 roughly, what percentage were citizens? So we have the actual number here. We have 35,000. Now we're just going to figure out what that average was, or sorry, what that percentage was. Okay, so what you do here is really just take what your answer number 2, which is 35,000, and then you divide it, okay, by your answer number 1. Okay, so that's how you would figure out that answer for number 3. And if you have a calculator, go ahead and type that in and kind of see what you get. You should get something like 0.127 roughly, I think. So it should be about 0.127. And then what you could do then is you can either times that answer by 100 to get the percentage, or if you want to kind of skip that step, which I recommend doing, is you take that decimal and you just move it over to the right 2 places. Okay. And then that should give you answer for number 3 for the population, or the percentage of population, which is 12.7%. If you want to round up and say 13%, you can. Okay. I'll take either. So again, just kind of simple division here. Again, instead of multiplying that answer by 100, you can just move the decimal over to 2 spots, which gives you 12.7%, or round up if you like, or 13%. So 13% of ancient Athens population were considered citizens. Okay, that's not even a quarter. That's not even 25. Obviously, it's well under half. So again, it's a very small percentage of their population were actual citizens or had a decision in the laws that were made for everybody else. So again, the remaining 87% of the people who live in Athens have to follow what this 13% people come up with. Was that maybe the most fair? You can make a case for either way, I guess, but it's an interesting thing to think about. So then what we're looking at for number 4, we're looking at for number 4 is what percentage of the citizens usually attended the assembly. Okay, so the assembly was one of those one of those political institutions where about 5,000 people regularly attended. Okay, so you're going to take that number, you're going to take 5,000, again, which we get from the reading, and then divide that into 35,000, the number of citizens. Okay, so that's what you can type in your calculator. And then that should give you an answer like 0.14. Again, you can either times 0.14 times 100, or you could just move the decimal over 2 spaces, which gives you about 14%. Okay. So of the 13% of the citizens, only 14% of them actually served in the assembly. Okay. And it gives you a little hint on the paper as well. Okay. So number of the part divided by whole times 100. Again, this is a nice practice for tipping as well. So you can just move the decimal over. All right. So again, if you need to come back to it, it's there in the chat. Give you a little hint there. So we have just about 5 minutes left before we wrap up today's little lesson. So parts E and F, okay, they're going to require a slightly more writing, and part E may be a little tricky initially. You can kind of see, let me get the right one. You can see where it says like group discussion. So this is one of those times where, the work says talk with a partner or work with a small group. You obviously can't do that. If you want to talk in the chat, you can. If you talk to somebody through text, Snapchat, whatever, you can do that. It's not being required, but you should still be able to try, again, keyword here, try to answer it individually the best that you can. Okay, so it's saying consider this for part E. So answer the questions on the left based on the reading. Again, quick, like 1 or 2 word answers here. And then discuss the questions on the right with your group. Write your answers in the space provided. So again, you can't necessarily ask people, but you should be able to think about these individually and on your own. And again, maybe like 1 sentence here, if you can. And not full-on paragraphs, not required. But these are just really questions to kind of think strongly about. So why do you think there are different ages for varying positions? Okay, because that's the core of number 1 here for part E. At what age could citizens vote in the assembly, serve on council, or be a juror? So it's just really asking, why do you think there were these requirements? Is it because people are not mature enough at this age, or they've got a lot of experience? So it really kind of it could change based on whoever's answering. I know it says group discussion, but it's still something I think we can answer individually, or at least attempt and try to answer. Number 2 is really asking how long could someone serve on the Council of 500? They go into that over the reading, so make sure you have that handy. And then these, again, questions that are meant for group discussions, but they're questions I still think you can, again, attempt to answer by yourself. Why do you think Athenians made this rule? And it gives you a little hint there to kind of help out. What is the advantage of limiting a member's service? What is the disadvantage? So what's a positive? What's a negative? That's really what it's asking. What's a positive to a term limit? What is a negative to a term limit? Maybe this person is a really good leader or has a lot of good ideas, what would be a positive of that? You want to get any kind of other input or any new fresh ideas. Disadvantage, okay, well, maybe this person is popular, and maybe because of the laws that or decisions this person's making, a lot of people like him, and you're not, and you run the risk of potentially getting some bad laws in the future. Number three is asking how was someone chosen to be on the council. That's kind of that lottery system, kind of picked randomly. And then these questions, again, says group discussion. Try to answer them as individuals if you can. Number four, what were the sizes of the juries? It's always those kind of weird odd numbers. So go back to the reading and figure that out. And again, I may have answered this already, or may have been something that was apparent. It's like, why do you think they made them an odd number? Again, kind of simple here. If something is being voted on, you want to have a majority. You can't, or you don't want to fall to the point where it's just a even split down the middle. You got to have a majority one way or another. All right, so in just a couple minutes, I'll go over activity F, and then we'll kind of call it a day. So activity F is asking us to kind of put everything together, brainstorm kind of what we know about American government. So really from that kind of first packet, and it's asking you to come up with some ideas of some influences that we have here in the United States from ancient Greece. So brainstorm. So now that we learned about Athenian democracy, what terms and structures do you think we borrowed in creating the government of the United States? Make a list. Your list can include things that seem similar to, but different, but somewhat different from Athenian democracy too. So number your list. We started you off, but you can always add more. So there's a list of 8 here. If you want to shoot for 8, go ahead. If you want to add more than 8, if you want to try to go for 10, great. I'm going to say let's maybe try to at least get somewhere between 3 to 5 if you can. Okay, you can go back into some of the earlier assignments or think back to the first Blizzard bag and kind of how our government is set up. Think about our foundation of government. What kind of government do we have? Is it a democracy like the ancient Greeks had? Does it require citizens to participate? Are there checks and balances? Who gets to vote and stuff like that? What about juries and courts? So those are just some kind of things to think about as we're looking for influences here. Again, I know it gives us like 1 through 8. I'm going to say let's at least shoot for like 3 to 5. Okay. So I know this is maybe asking us to do a lot of writing. It's asking us to think critically and to think deeply about some of these things, but I think it's something you guys are going to be able to do. And again, the one where it's asking you to discuss with a group on the previous activity, just try your best to answer that individually if you can. If you got questions, you can always ask through email to me. You can ask on Google Classroom. You can ask in the Google Hangouts thread. Just try to reach us if you have questions. Ask your friends, siblings, cousins, whatever, if you guys are all in the same school. That's really what I have for you today, was kind of really taking this deep dive into democracy, kind of seeing its origins and really the influences that it has on us today. So, make sure you guys are keeping up the work. I know it seems like a lot. We're kind of asking you guys to do a lot, and apologize if it seems like overload. We have things that we need to do that we're being told to do as well, but we're just trying to make this as easy and the best for everybody as possible. But on that note, unless you guys have any other questions, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Remember, Mother's Day is coming up Sunday, so make sure you do something nice for mom if you're able to. Stay safe, stay home as much as you can. If you do go out, please be careful. Please, if you got a mask, wear it. Try to keep the social distancing thing in mind. I know everybody's getting kind of antsy and wants to go back to quote unquote normal by Kennedy. But take this thing seriously, because it's still a very serious thing that's going on. But yeah, like Kennedy says there, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Bye.